Hello and welcome. You're watching The Mint. I'm Andy Hodges and this is ZTM Prime broadcasting to you from our studios in Harare, Zimbabwe. Tourism and the climate or the environment. Well, there is one minister in Zimbabwe who's responsible for that and more. But today we're going to look at tourism, and of course there will be part two tomorrow night on The Mint, same time, 2 p.m, where we speak to the minister concerning the environment. Of course, I'm talking about the Zimbabwe's Minister of Environment, Climate, Tourism and Hospitality Industry, Honorable Mangaliso Ndlovu. This is The Mint. Don't go away. We'll be right back with the minister. Welcome back. You're watching The Mint. I'm Andy Hodges. Now, as I said in my introduction, today we have the privilege of having in the studio an exclusive interview with Zimbabwe's Minister of Environment, Climate, Tourism and Hospitality Industry, Honorable Mangaliso Ndlovu. Honorable Minister, welcome to ZTM Prime and The Mint, sir.
Thank you, Andy, and good afternoon to the listeners and viewers.
Minister, you've had a busy couple of weeks, or a busy week at least, because you've just returned from the tour, leading the tourism delegation to Durban, South Africa, for the 2023 edition of Africa's Travel Indaba ATA. Now, let me just give you some numbers. 20 African countries participating, 350 tourism products, 1,000 buyers, under 1,000 exhibitors. I mean, everything was happening there. So, how did the Indaba go, in your perspective, from a Zimbabwean viewpoint?
Thank you, Andy. I think Durban has been fantastic for the tourism industry for Zimbabwe. We have had one of the largest delegations that we have had going to Durban, and coming at the right time when we are recovering from COVID-19. We had round about close to 50 companies that were exhibiting there. And the fact that I was able to lead the delegation, I think it really came out very well. I must say that from the feedback that I got when I was there, the Zimbabwean stand was the busiest, so many inquiries, and this is kind of encouraging on our part. We were also able to utilize that to really exchange notes with colleague ministers, with other players and buyers right across the African continent and beyond. So it's one area where I think, on a recovery point of view, we really needed to be there, and I feel we made the most of it.
I must say, you know, you're right. I do feel that the world is now getting back to let's visit Zimbabwe. It seems to be the must. And also as well, I remember we had a discussion some time ago about your plans to make us a regional destination. In other words, let's feed off each other rather than compete individual countries. Maybe talk about that a little bit, how Durban fit into that.
So you'll realize that Zimbabwe is one country that you would think is small within the region, but where it is located, it's so strategic, from air linkage to road linkage, rail linkage. If we're able to package Zimbabwe as land linked, as air linked, you'll find that it becomes easier to optimize on the visits to the country. And we are seeing that almost every country in SADC, except maybe for Lesotho, we're trying to check. Almost every country in the region, they now have a flight that comes to Harare. Your Mozambique has a flight coming, Eswatini has just come through, Zambia has a flight coming, Botswana, South Africa. I also like that the private players are also coming in, your Airlink. Our own FastJet is doing very well. They are now flying into Krugerstop. So we are slowly moving towards playing that regional hub link in terms of air travel. We just need to make sure that it is also complemented by the road system, so that people can fly into Zimbabwe and take some healthy road drives into other countries in the region.
Now, you did mention, for example, Eswatini. We were privileged to have the King of Eswatini come and open the Zimbabwe International Trade Fair recently, and I know that ZTA, Zimbabwe Tourism Authority, signed an MOU with them. But we do have a lot of MOUs that are signed with various countries. I suppose the problem doesn't come in the MOU, it comes in the implementation of those MOUs. What are you doing about that? Because that is a critical component.
You're quite right, Andy. MOUs are meant really to provide a platform for engagement, for exchange of information, for even learning from each other. But what often happens is that we sign them, we put them in the shelves, nothing happens. But from government's perspective, there are platforms where we review implementation under what we call either binational commissions, BNCs, or JPCC, Joint Permanent Commissions on Cooperation. These are led by Foreign Affairs. And oftentimes when we meet, the thrust is to review these MOUs, see where we are on implementation. We don't necessarily have to wait for those, but they normally tend to provide a platform where governments sit down and look at this. So that was part of what we really had to focus on when we were in Durban. In discussions with my colleague ministers, I had time to meet with Zambia, with Malawi, with Namibia, with Botswana, with South Africa, Eswatini, Mozambique, all of them. The key issues for discussion was to say, where are we on our tourism cooperation? The MOUs are there. How are we progressing in terms of implementation? And we agreed on critical steps that have to be taken on each.
Okay, so you agreed with all the ministers what needed to be done to really make this fully. I mean, one area, of course, which possibly was covered in these was the ease of movement across borders, because obviously tourists, they don't like that hassle of queuing, hassle of getting visas at borders and so forth. Is that a major concern among Southern African nations?
So what was interesting, Andy, is that with each ministry there were specific issues. So I raised that specifically with Minister Delil, because in Beitbridge, the ease of movement on the Zimbabwean side is amazing, but there are bottlenecks on the South African side. And I'm happy that her DG was able to articulate that, Minister, we need to make sure that we move with speed on this. We have discussed it. Our officials met about 3 weeks ago at the border to look at issues that need to be corrected, that need to, especially on the South African side. So that was our main issue. I'm happy that the visa regime between Zimbabwe and South Africa so far is very good. It so happened that when we were in Durban, the minister released statistics, Minister Delil, about their first quarter performance. And their highest number of tourists came from Zimbabwe, around 500,000. So she attributed a lot to the good relations between the two nations, but also the ease of movement that is being done. But the visa regime, I think, is what they attribute the most. With Zambia, for instance, we have a uni-visa system which we have for CASA. And other countries are still trying to implement it, but the movement between Zimbabwe and Zambia has been very smooth. But where we needed to cooperate more is around Victoria Falls, UNESCO issues, and we will be signing one transfrontier conservation area, which is Lower Zambezi, Manapools, on the 26th, next week, Friday, I think. So we agreed on that. We want to promote, tourism around the whole channel of the Zambezi River. We believe we have so many opportunities that we have not taken advantage of. It's so different with Eswatini. There is not much tourism between the two countries. Now with the plane coming here, we want to start doing joint promotion. They want to come and learn how we have packaged our tourism destinations. They acknowledge that they don't have as many. Their main anchor is cultural tourism, which we also want to learn from them. So for their reed dance, I'm invited there and I'll be going there. I'll go with
beautiful country though, isn't it? It's a
very
beautiful country.
With Malawi, I just want to touch on Malawi. Malawi, again, there is not much traffic between the two. And we want to try and explore road travel. They have got a summer event around September, and we want to see if we can sponsor young people, promote rather than sponsor, promote young people. We have a bus or two to go. I think they have an event in a lake, and they've also promised they will do the same when we have our Victoria Falls Carnival.
Very nice.
And this is how you can begin to promote the appreciation of each other's tourism facilities. When you go to Europe, the numbers of intra-EU travel are amazing. And we are not having those numbers in our SATAC.
But you're right. I mean, if you're in the UK, you normally go to Spain. If you're in Portugal, you may go to France. You don't go far afield. But you're right. We sort of think, let's go somewhere far afield. But bearing this in mind, all these efforts to promote tourism, there is one issue which I think could be of concern in the short, medium term at least, and that's the issue of the availability of hotel beds or rooms in the country. I mean, the number I got, and I may even be too low, was 2,000 beds required in a very, very short term to cater for the additional inflows. And I mean, this speaks to new hotels, new lodges being built all around the country. Where do we stand in this? Because we can talk about promoting tourism rebounding, but if we don't have the beds, we kind of got a ceiling we reach.
That's a very sad reality, and we have huge shortage of beds, of rooms. But I must say, this has to be acknowledged, that when the president came in and said Zimbabwe is open for business and really began making that investment climate conducive, we have seen massive investments into this. It's just that the backlog had just ballooned and there's so much to catch up on. 2021, we had more than $180 million going into investments in the tourism sector, mainly accommodation. Of course, facilities and restaurants are also included. Last year alone, we had more than $300 million going into investments. We saw the president opening some of the facilities. I think it was 2021. So much has been happening, but the gap is just too much. And when we look at how optimistic we are with this tourism sector, we believe that by 2025, I think we need to have added not less than 5,000. In fact, we believe to meet our demand is close to 7,000. So that's how far we have to go. But I must say there is there are a number of players who have put in a lot of money. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know, a lot of it has gone towards refurbishing in existing infrastructure. All our major hotels, they have gone into refurbishment. I think I'll be going to officially open a refurbished one under Cresta. Rainbow has done the same, almost all of them really. Cresta is putting up, I think, a new facility in Vic Falls. In the next 3 years, they will have added more than 200 rooms. So these are some of the areas that we are looking at. We're still trying to engage owners of Kingdom, because it's one that is a bit of a setback at the moment. It's still down, but they've promised us that they are working on getting it back. So we want to make sure we use every asset that we can. Why it's important, Andy? Another key factor that is now driving our tourism is MICE tourism, business tourism. If you look at
the conferences and so forth,
and we are now attracting international, which is very good. We struggle to accommodate people in the recently held ICT one. We struggled. We have Ministry of Health, they have about 2 in the second half of the year, and they will all be in Victoria Falls. Yet we do not have a single multi-purpose conference center in the country, not a single one. And it just tells you that while the optimism is there, we really need to start thinking requisite infrastructure. We're trying to persuade a few. They are very good prospects. But until people start working on the ground, it remains a prospect.
And also, I suppose, if somewhere like Victoria Falls, you eventually start running out of space to a certain degree, don't you? Particularly all the major by-the-river kind of setups. But I want to talk to you about the recovery of the tourism sector, which you just mentioned. I mean, arrivals up 150% 2021 to 2022. You know, and of course, you had 1.3 billion earnings for the tourism sector pre-COVID. It's interesting. What are your thoughts? Are we getting back there? Are we trying to reignite interest in Zimbabwe outside of traditional markets as well to market our product? Because again, it's almost like a catch-22, isn't it? The more you market, the more come, and the less facilities you have to accommodate them and so forth, and you kind of can get a little bit sort of destroy the brand to a certain degree.
So, Andy, our recovery has in a way surpassed our expectations. You remember we were very daring to launch the recovery and growth strategy in 2020, right at the height of COVID.
I remember.
Our expectations at the time was that the COVID will pretty much be gone by end of 2020. We saw it going well into 2021, and it was only this past week that the World Health Organization said it's no longer a pandemic of international concern. So it tells you that up to that time, there was still some constraint on international travel. But our recovery has been quite great. I mean, last year, as you are highlighting, we were only around 200 million short of our peak ever, which was around 1.5 billion. So when you look at our receipts, we have traditionally been between third and second in terms of our foreign currency earnings after exports. So we normally have to compete with remittances. But I believe tourism offers us a much more potential really to go there.
Longer term potential.
Our thinking is, as we recover, how do we recover better than we ever were? How do we make sure that our earnings multiply? That's why we have targeted 5 billion tourism industry. Why we were targeting 5 billion, it was my assessment that we are underreporting, for starters, the performance of the sector. And I'll give you my thinking. We have never reported the contribution of domestic tourism in the economy. In fact, we have never really measured them correctly, and we are working with Zimstats on this. Just last year, we had close to 12 million visits domestic. And when you talk of international, it's around 1.3 million. So it tells you that the anchor of our tourism is domestic. But because we are not reporting it, we are not measuring it accurately, we are then not able to police or come up with policy frameworks that support it. Why it rose so much? Because our thinking is that we rose from around 6 to 7 million to close to 12. With the Minister of Finance, we agreed that we need to incentivize domestic travel. They waived VAT on domestic travel for almost 1.5 to 2 years. And those were the fruits, in our view, that drove domestic tourism. We also launched, at the height of COVID-19, our domestic tourism promotion campaign. We called it Zimbo. We launched it in Kariba. And tell you what, talk to any tourism operator. They will tell you that domestic tourism saved them. Many jobs could have been lost, some could have closed, but it was domestic tourism. So I still think that the contribution of the tourism sector is quite massive. And I'm so happy that we have received so much support from the President and from the government, really. Treasury, I'm sure you know that they have supported 2 major interventions. First was the establishment of what we call the tourism satellite account, something that we have never had, but we have always wanted to have as a country. It consolidates your performance. It gives you pinpointed analysis on which areas you need to focus on. And now our focus is really to say, how do we spread our tourism right across the country? We can't keep talking of Victoria Falls.
We can't, yeah. I think that's one of the issues, and I will get to a question about that. But before I do, I just wanted to really touch on the fact that, you know, I recall the days 40-odd airlines would fly into Zimbabwe. I mean, there was literally 7, 10 flights a day, and I see that that's picking up. Emirates, Qatar, Eswatini, Rwanda. I mean, I could go on and on. The airlines that are coming, Turkish airline plans to come in, and of course, couple that with the refurbishment of the Robert Mugabe International Airport. I mean, these can only signify huge potential and huge opportunities for the Zimbabwe economy and tourism. I mean, the airport is beautiful. I was lucky enough to go have a look at it. It's fantastic.
Oh, it is fantastic. I mean, I might just comment about infrastructure development that this country has experienced over the last 5, 6 years. It's massive. It's unprecedented to have such development in a very short space of time. Regardless of the pandemics that we have had, at some point we've had droughts, at some point we've had massive disasters, climate-induced disasters, but that never shifted the focus of government in terms of what has to be done. Another key infrastructure, water, which I will comment on later, and how it gives us opportunities to unlock tourism as we move forward. You spoke of the airlines. Airlines will never go where they are not optimistic about growth prospects. So this tells you that when they look at Zimbabwe, they are looking at prospects for people wanting to visit the region, anchored by their desire to go to Victoria Falls. And it's now on us to package Zimbabwe as a whole and not just one sub-destination. We have beautiful wildlife, beautiful landscapes. We just need to make sure that in our packaging of the mighty Victoria Falls, people get to know that you can go to the Lowveld. You can visit our Eastern Highlands and you get the best weather that you can experience. So we are very much excited around this, and we hope that our own airline, Air Zimbabwe, will begin to also play a pivotal role of now taking people to other areas within the country. When bigger airlines come, then we should be able to distribute them right across. So we have a few challenges. One, I think with the Eurowings, we haven't really made public this. They are flying straight into Victoria Falls. But a lot of people coming in would want to land in Harare, and then some might go to Victoria Falls, some to other destinations. So because of that, I think there have been challenges with volumes, and they've told us that they are now reconsidering to see if maybe Eurowings can then fly into Harare.
Oh,
so,
that would be good news.
Yeah, we believe that it would really go a long way in, you know, Harare will always be the anchor. Harare will be the center from which we then need our domestic airlines to really play a pivotal role.
So that brings me to exactly the next question, because April, FastJet started servicing Kariba and Hwange routes. Okay, we'll talk about the pricing structure a bit later on. And obviously, a robust air network is critical for tourists to come in the country. You don't want to land in Harare, rent a car, drive all the way to the Lowveld, to Nyango and so forth. They'd rather fly there with all the attendant infrastructure in place. Now, that opens up another issue that we have. One, not enough airlines servicing domestic tourism destinations outside of Victoria Falls and Kariba. And of course, secondly, of course, you know, the state of the infrastructure, the airports in these places. Buffalo Range is a good example. What about that?
Thank you, Andy. We are also worried that we do not have adequate domestic connectivity in terms of flights. Our recovery and growth strategy really anchors on this. I'm happy that we now have FastJet going into Kariba, and also Hwange is within that circuit. We desperately need connectivity with Mutare, connectivity with Masvingo, mainly with Buffalo Range. I also think we need to reach Beitbridge, we need to reach Midlands through Gweru. I'm happy to say that the Ministry of Transport is working on this. In fact, they've the infrastructure in Binga is very good. Maybe it's the amenity side.
Beautiful place to go.
Beautiful place. So it's the amenity side that needs some bit of work, and I'm sure DTF is working on that. Buffalo Range, you know, they are receiving international aircraft
already.
Yeah, they do. But I think it's really a matter of the airlines domestic establishing frequent flights. I had a very beautiful discussion with FastJet in Durban. They were there, and they told me that now that they've done Kariba, Buffalo Range is their next target. They are looking into it. We hope that in the next 12 months, they will announce that they are now going there. We need to continue to unlock this. I hope they will be able to link Buffalo Range maybe with Midlands or Beitbridge, so that you are able to increase volumes into these areas. It gives us an opportunity to then market those places to a wider audience for people to be able to get there. But I must say there's nothing wrong with road drives. People get to experience the beauty of our country.
I agree. It's just that I know that when I land somewhere, I prefer to fly than drive another 4 hours. But you're right, a road drive always works. Melissa, I want to get back to pricing, if you don't mind. I think, first of all, let's talk about critics contending that our local destinations, irrespective of who you are, appear to be overpriced when compared to the region. I think maybe comment on that first before I move on to the issue of locals pricing.
Tell you what, when we were in Durban, the starting point is I was discussing with my colleague, minister from Zambia. He says, Minister, how are you dealing with the issue of pricing? He says, I'm so tired. Everyone tells me how expensive it is. But he says, I've told them, and I want to say this, I might not be popular for saying it. I believe our tourism is a price for everyone. We just need to know where to go for us to be able to access what we can afford.
Premium or low, whatever.
You will get accommodation for $20 in Vic Falls. Okay. You will get one for 30, for 50, for 100. It can go that far high.
Even.
Yeah. But generally, the question is to say, where I'm paying $300, should I be paying $300? You know, we've battled with the industry on this to say, but where are your painful points? Of course, they will raise a number of issues, including the cost build-up issues that they're highlighting. But it's clear that it's a combination of both cost build-up issues as well as high margins that they are charging. And
oh, so you accept that they are high margins? In
I do, and we have engaged that. At some point, I told some that you find breakfast that is more expensive than a goat.
I tell you, it's true. I heard Guru Matanga say that. It's true. You can literally buy a goat. Yeah, $80 a breakfast.
So it really needs a holistic approach between industry and government, and we've been engaging on these issues. Just to say, on the cost build-up, where government is concerned, we have been able to look at these issues. It's work in progress. Okay. It cross-cuts a number of ministries. It therefore had to be handled at OPC level under ease and cost of doing business. Right. That's why they are looking at these issues. But also, government, we intervened with the waiver of VAT. We always try to make sure that where we can, we try and give relief as government.
Because the payback is so huge, you know. But Minister, I want to talk about it. You said something earlier, and I jumped on it, and I liked it a lot when tourism sector said, you know what, it was local tourists that kept us going and in business. Now it's, I don't know, now it seems the local tourists that now they don't want us anymore. The foreigners are coming in, the hotel prices have gone up, domestic tourism seems to have sort of left it. If you go there, sometimes you can't find rooms as a local. I mean, these are some of the things we've heard from locals who are going back to the same places we're encouraged to go. I mean, surely, I hope that's not the case, because as you said, without us, local tourism, you really don't have a tourism sector.
Tell you what, even the operators themselves, they'll tell you. I always talk to, especially the executives. I was talking to Tendai the other day. He tells me that, Minister, domestic tourism is amazing. It has kept RTG really afloat. At times, the Rainbow, Bulawayo will be full. Yeah. For almost the whole week or weekend. He's telling me that this year they are likely to have their highest occupancies ever. And it's all anchored on domestic tourism. I haven't really received the kind of complaints that you have received.
Maybe I'm talking to Discount.
But, you know, certainly tourism is demand-driven, and you know, price gets to be a function of demand in most cases. So when you see the prices go up, it's also a way of trying to manage demand. I want to believe that we have room for our locals. They will always be the anchor of our tourism. We cannot afford to lose them.
Unfortunately, that is the end of today's segment of The Mint. Today we're talking tourism, the tourism sector. I'm here with, of course, Zimbabwe's Minister of Environment, Climate, Tourism and Hospitality Industry, Honourable Mangaliso Ndlovu. You know, when I was talking to you before the show, I realised what a portfolio he had. So today we're just going to look at, of course, today we looked at tourism, and tomorrow at 2 p.m. on The Mint, the interview will continue looking at the environment and climate. I haven't even started touching on forestry and all the other issues under the Minister's purview, but I'm sure we'll be bringing those to you soon in the next few weeks and next few episodes. But anyway, that's it for today's episode of The Mint. Tomorrow afternoon, part 2 of The Mint, talking environment with the Honourable Minister. I'm Andy Hodges. Goodbye, have a great day, and you all be safe.
Welcome to Chew On, the show that links people